U.S. soccer youth development has drastically improved in the past few decades. But what if I told you it's broken and there is no quick fix? Honestly, some of the issues might even have no fix. They can't be fixed because of the current structure that U.S. soccer runs. Well, today we're going to be discussing all of that. The issues, possible short-term and long-term solutions, and as I said, for some of the cases, there might be no solution, mainly because of the federation. And a little bit to do with US soccer culture in general, our culture as a country, which is okay. We're different from South American countries, European countries, so some things can't really just be implemented. Hi, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to an episode that I think is a very important conversation that we must have about U.S. soccer youth development. Talk about how can it improve? How can we maximize the potential of the United States of America and the U.S. men's national team? And today we're going to have a special guest, Adam Belz from Scuffed podcast, one of the largest U.S. soccer podcasts out there, as our guest for this specific topic. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think? I would really like to know your thoughts on this topic and how we can continue to improve U.S. soccer youth development. And you can probably listen to the entire conversation and draw your own conclusions. We're going to be addressing the issues and obviously possible solutions. And most certainly send some of your suggestions in the comment section down below. I will be reading and maybe I'll address it in future videos. And make sure you hit the like button if you want to. It helps the channel, but I will not hold you accountable for it. Mainly because I can't really do anything about it. So do as you wish. Okay? Let's bring in Adam and talk about U.S. soccer youth development. Okay, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about U.S. soccer youth development. Obviously, we talk more about the U.S. men's national team here, so it's going to be more focused on that. I don't follow youth development in the women's game, so everything I address here, I'm mainly focused on that, just to make that clear. And I have a special guest for the first time here at the channel, Adam Belz from Scuffed podcast. I was at your podcast probably before this episode's out, actually. But Adam, how are you doing today?
Very well. Very well. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming on Scuffed.
You're not even on YouTube. You're on podcast, but your background's better than mine.
Yeah. Well, technically we are on YouTube. We're just very, very bad at it. So,
Oh, you definitely got the studio set better than me already. But Adam, I'm going to give you the mic more than myself today, and I want you to talk a bit more, and I'll obviously elaborate on my points. But we can even go into that tweet that we disagreed. But mainly what I want to do is one point that we did agree first. That's what I want to go to. We had the podcast, Scuffed, that I was in, and you made a very good point. You talked about how U.S. soccer youth development as a whole here in the U.S. is broken. You talked about the pay-to-play, the travel teams, that structure specifically. Can you elaborate a bit more on that? Because when you talked about it, I agreed, but we were talking about other stuff, so you kind of like skimmed through it. For anyone that doesn't know, or people that are living through it, what are the issues that you see first? Then we'll go through possible solutions.
Well, so the way most people know this, but the way pay to play works is you join a sort of like an elite travel club in your local area, and that's like a status thing for the parents and maybe for the kids too. And then they go and travel to like towns 4 hours away or 5 hours away on the weekends. They pay for hotels. They go and play a game against another club in front of nobody, at an empty field, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think it's broken in a lot of ways. For one, it's, prices out children, young players whose parents don't have a lot of money. They just can't do that. They can't commit to that kind of financial commitment, and also all the travel and time. The other thing is that kind of club soccer, it has bad incentives. So the parents, say they're paying $7,000-$10,000 a year if you include travel and hotels for this. They go take time out of their busy schedule to go to a town 4 hours away to watch their kid play. They want to win. They want to win the game. And so the incentives are win at all costs, because these coaches, they're totally dependent on the parents who are paying the fees. It's just, it doesn't I don't think it encourages development. It doesn't encourage growth of the game. It doesn't democratize the sport in the way that I think we want it to be democratized. So, I'm more interested in local soccer, in free soccer, and in, ways to grow the game that way than I am in like trying to improve that club system because I don't know how, I don't think it can be improved. I don't think it can be fixed.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned is an interesting one because you talked about how the result driven aspect of it. So what
Right.
does that lead to? If you're playing 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds, usually what you're going to do at that age is pick the bigger kid. That's
Yep.
it.
The faster
And
kid, the bigger kid, kick it
and
long
you'll
to
win.
him. Yeah.
And you'll win most of the time. So and that's not encouraging development. And you talked about that. Coaches should be proud of developing players that become professional soccer players that are successful. Instead, because of the pay to play structure that we have in the United States specifically, they rather get that 1-0 win at the U10s rather than get that one player that'll play in Major League Soccer in Europe. And at the end of the day, that doesn't encourage youth development. And to be fair, countries like Brazil have pay to play too, but there's also abundance of academies that we're going to talk about in a second. Um, Let me
Well,
ask you one thing. Do you think there's something that can be done to resolve this pay to play structure in the US to motivate these coaches to develop instead of gain results and immediate compensation? We talked about, I think, in your podcast about FIFA solidarity payments. Do you think any of them are aware of that? Is there anything US soccer could do to maybe motivate this? Because it would have to go out of pay to play, it had to be free academies.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a little beyond me because yeah, the the solidarity payments is a great system, right, for incentivizing development at the youth level. But uh, I don't know how many of these club travel teams say I live near Chattanooga, Tennessee. I don't know how many of these club travel teams have anybody who's ever gonna get like a transfer fee, in the global game.
Mhm.
Um, that I think that's part of what makes it kind of dreary is like everybody's chasing like a college scholarship. Like that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of them will get that, but I don't even know how many of them get that. I've been talking to people recently who say a lot of these travel teams, there are one or two players who like could get a decent college scholarship. Everybody else is just there to sort of create the environment for that person to develop in that way. And yeah, I don't know. What's the way that you think US soccer could fix it?
So a couple things. I'm gonna piggyback on what you just said there. I'm gonna get what you said. You said that a lot of these kids don't look like they'll ever be like from the areas you mentioned, and honestly, that's probably what you just said. Probably describes multiple places in the United States, if not
Most of
most.
the most
Most
of
of
the
them,
country, yeah.
exactly. So the question is, I always talked about this very often. I think the biggest issue with U.S. soccer youth development right now, because Major League Soccer has free academies. I think usually most of them start at the U13 level, but the players arrive in the U13 level far behind other countries because we don't have a pickup culture. I don't think the pickup culture thing is something that really me, you, or US soccer can change. We can slowly implement a few things and it will grow a little bit over like a decade, but nothing that will be like we're not going to become South America in terms of the culture that's a cultural thing there and that's not our American culture and that's fine. That's not who we are. So I think there has to be something that Major League Soccer, USL, US Soccer, they have to work together. They have to work together on it to find a way to fix that age group, right? We talk about like the five, the U, I guess like U8s, U10s, U12s. So the player when he gets to the U13, he's already far more developed in a technical standpoint, which we'll talk about like the drills you said and like getting young kids to become technical at the ball, which in other countries they do. The problem with the US too is usually youth systems across the globe, they obviously compete with each other, but they compete for like they compete essentially for the best players and to develop the best players to sell the best players. Here we actually compete for whoever can pay more instead of like the play. And then when you go to Major League Soccer, you even have things which I don't know if they ended this or they're ending this, but like homegrown territorial rights, things like that do damage to youth development. So I think the business is just wrong. as a whole. There's such a big market out there of, and if you can educate professional teams like USL teams and even maybe smaller soccer schools that want to feed academies and have monetary compensation where they don't have to charge these massive fees for parents to go. I think paying something is fine, an amount to help sustain the thing, right? You got to rent a
Hmm.
field, nothing's free. We understand that. But when these clubs invest in this player, for example, I'll give you a suggestion. I have a soccer school here in Orlando. I'm making up a soccer school, right? But this soccer school, I want to develop players for Orlando City. Orlando City can maybe work with the communities here around because every player they develop, they have the infrastructure, the contacts to make that player a professional player, which will sell jerseys, win trophies, or sell that player to Europe. Orlando City has that access, which the average Joe like me, you, we don't have that. So if Orlando City can come to soccer clubs locally and say, hey, um, refer to me players to my academy. Each player that makes it to the academy in the tryouts will compensate you $3,000. So all of a sudden, I'm developing this player to essentially so he can get into Orlando City. I'm going to want to make him a better player. And Orlando City will pay $3,000, but they're investing in that athlete that they might. That is one thing I think that can be done in cities that have professional teams, mostly MLS cities, essentially. That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that have that. That's one way they can work with local soccer schools. So that soccer school can, like, okay, now I need to get better at this. Let me do, because look at this. If I send 10 players to the Orlando City Academy across all age groups, that's 30 grand right there. And I'm
Yeah.
already, and so that is one idea I had. I don't know how doable it is in a business aspect, but I think it's something that can work
Yeah,
in terms
it's
of,
MLS executives. I don't know that they've ever shown like the farsightedness to do something like that. You know, I mean, I could be being unfair, but I would imagine they would see something like that. That looks like a line item we don't want to pay for. If we can get those kids for free, we're not gonna. We gotta, we got a franchise to run here, and
Mhm.
we got to make the books. So I love that idea because it's sort of like mini solidarity payments, kind of.
Yeah,
But
almost like a gentleman's agreement in the community. So it's like you're Orlando City, you're the big boy here. No one's going to beat you. No one's going to compete with you.
right.
But you can get all these little local soccer schools to like it's a way to motivate them to, like, hey, forget the results. The parents are paying you that amount. I can pay you more if you develop a player for me.
Right.
Um,
No, I think that probably has some promise. Like, especially like you say, in cities where there is an MLS team that actually has the infrastructure to lift a player through the pipeline and sell them eventually. What about the vast, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast we recorded yesterday, but the vast areas of the country where there is no MLS team, you know?
mhm. That I might even throw that hot potato back to you, man, because that one's a big issue. We talked about how one of the solutions would be like promotion relegation because you just naturally have more professional teams because there's a pyramid structure, people to invest and try to grow, have more academies across the country. But MLS has 30 teams right now, right? With San Diego, is it 30? I think with San Diego, it'll be 30, and whatever they'll probably expand a bit more based on what we're hearing. Let's say they expand to like 40, which I don't think they will, but let's just say 40. That is 40 professional soccer clubs at the highest level of the US soccer. That's not enough in terms of academies,
Mhm.
right? So you go to Brazil, there's this tournament in Brazil called the Copinha every January, every year, where they have academies from all over the country playing from division one, two, three, four, five, six, and some teams that are not even in a division. So
Hmm.
you get, I think it's a total of 120 free academies competing with each other. And there's scouts from all over the country trying to get these players. It's actually a very high level competition. It's one of the strongest U20 competitions in the world.
Is U20? Is that what you is
Yes,
that's the
U20.
age group? Okay.
It's U20. So it's like the last possible academy. But most players are like U18s, right? Because the U20s are professional, a lot of them.
Right.
But it's the Copinha. If we had more, the problem is when you look at our structure too, MLS and USL are not partners, they're competitors. So if you try to do something like that, and then MLS is like, well, I'm leading the market. Why would I do that? That would help USL. It would draw more attention to them. That's why MLS doesn't really like the Open Cup. They only want to beat USL in it. They don't care that much. That's another issue. This two league system here, or separate entities, single entity leagues. That's something I think U.S. soccer could do more. And I know you said you also would be for promotion relegation. It's just that it's kind of pointless to debate it at this point because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, I guess there are some people who wouldn't be for it,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, we all know that, and it does provide the right incentives, because if a club, if like Chattanooga FC is kind of a club that it's in NISA, NISA, and
Hmm.
they have there's a lot of people involved with that club who are into promotion relegation, because it's like, if there was promotion relegation, they could do something in American soccer, but the way it is, with like USL being its own entity and MLS being its own entity, and Chattanooga FC getting kind of big footed by USL by bringing in the Chattanooga Red Wolves. I mean, they got several layers to get through before. I mean, it's basically pie in the sky. They're never gonna do anything. But if they could, if it was like England, or basically any country other than ours, almost any country other than ours, they could develop players, do a really good job of it, start winning in the league they play in, get promoted to the next league, keep developing players, maybe buy a few players, maybe sell some players. You know how the whole thing works. It would be wonderful, and it would actually incentivize development locally. And I think I could be wrong, but I think that's why a lot of people are interested in promotion relegation, because it's sort of this ground up system. But like you said, we're not gonna get it. MLS is never gonna let it happen, at least in a pure way. And I think the thing about MLS that bugs me is, you don't always get the sense that the league is a real partner in like this effort to grow the game,
Hmm.
because they're so stuck on survival. They've been stuck on survival since the beginning, and now they're doing better. But soccer leagues have come and go in the US, and they came along and they came up with this structure that was safe enough and like kind of enough to get off the ground and start going. So I feel like their concerns are much more like, how do we get more people in the seats at FC Dallas games, than they are about how we grow the game so that we can have a national team that wins the World Cup one day. It
Do you
doesn't seem
think
like that's an issue for them.
Do you think that's a lot to do with them being still in survival mode? Because the league almost folded early in its early days. And then even after that, there were many years where it's still kind of like, let's just try to survive, try to survive. So you think maybe that's why? Well, obviously, promotion relegation has some financial interest from owners of protecting them, but there are things outside of that. Like we talked about territorial rights early on. That seems like something that's not needed nowadays, but they're doing it just to protect owners that probably don't want to invest in their academies.
Right.
Uh, is that the survival mode mentality? Probably.
I'm not an expert on like the ivory tower MLS intrigue, but I gather that sort of survival mode, like, look what we've done, we've actually created a working soccer league, is still kind of the mindset. We're not gonna we're not gonna give away money when we don't have to. We're not gonna spend money where we don't have to. We're gonna protect the owners who don't want to spend money. And yeah, I think survival mode is probably not exactly what it is at the moment, but I'm sure that mindset has an influence in the corner office there, because Don
Mhm,
Garber's been there since the beginning.
mhm.
So
Yeah. So we talked about the whole pay to play structure, travel teams, which in terms of elite player development, we talked about this on your podcast that it's useless in terms of elite player development. We talked about possible local solutions for MLS clubs, like the Orlando City example I gave you. We haven't really been able to figure out a solution for the country having an abundance of academies. I don't know what to do in regards to that. Like cities without MLS clubs, MLS franchises, or even USL teams. Uh, some USL cities, the team does have enough of an infrastructure and money to do so. But let's be honest, it's not like MLS. The MLS teams have far more money, far more infrastructure and resources, connections. So that one's an issue. We're not able to actually cover. I guess the best way to put it is like cover enough ground in the United States where we give enough opportunity to everyone, and then boom, you're done. You go to certain cities, certain states where you don't have an MLS team, things don't really work that way. Development is almost non-existent. not completely, but almost. I think we kind of touched upon the big picture things that U.S. soccer and MLS clubs could do. U.S. soccer as a whole, they have to bridge the gap between USL and MLS. They have to find a way to get these leagues that have the resources to work together. They're not doing a good job on that, in my opinion. But Adam, let's go to something more personal. What can we do? I know we're not going to fix this on our own. We're not going to fix it at all, actually, but we can all, as average soccer fans, or even in our case, content creators and soccer fans, what can we do to help or maybe lower these issues?
I think we touched on the key thing a little bit when we recorded I guess it was yesterday. Which is culture building, you know. Um the structures are what they are. We you and I can't fix them. And but we can help more kids love the game of soccer. And you're doing that with your soccer school. I'm trying to do that as a rec soccer coach, in a place where soccer is not that big of a deal. So I think it really. Let me, if you allow me for a second. I
Mhm.
also coach rec basketball, and people on my podcast have heard this story before. But you hear that, you look at the difference between the two systems. Rec basketball where I live is a big deal. There's like, I'm talking U6 level basketball, 8 foot rim. A lot of kids can't even get it up there. They're just out there learning how to play.
Mhm.
A couple of the kids on the team can get the ball up in the hoop and actually score. But there are so many teams and so many players, and there's so many parents who know the game of basketball at least a little bit, and so they're out there helping their kids improve. And it's a it's a big system that that is basically free, $100 a season. That's all that anybody pays, but the infrastructure is good, tons of good competition. Kids are learning how to play basketball. You look at soccer, it's sort of similar, but it's just not as robust, and the coaching is not as good relative to the sport as it is in basketball, because just the base of knowledge that people have. And so I guess one thing I think is, if we can just get more kids to love soccer, do a better job of coaching the kids who are already playing rec soccer, and teach them to teach the next generation to love soccer, which I think is something you landed on when we recorded. Like, their kids, if you
Mhm.
teach a kid to love soccer, that person will teach his or her kids to love soccer even better than they did, even more than they did, most likely. And then we'll sort of have like a flywheel effect. Very slow flywheel, like we're talking generational flywheel, but
Mhm.
still, I don't see any alternative. I don't see a shortcut on that. It's got to be more people who love soccer, more people who teach their kids to love soccer, more kids who learn to love soccer from a very young age and learn to love the ball. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter what kind of coaching you get. If you don't, that's, I guess, partly to your point about pickup soccer.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what kind of coaching you get. If by the time you're 8, it's the first time you touch the ball, you're probably not going to be a pro soccer player.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I entirely agree with that, and I think we can also add the fact that we talked about what can we do. Essentially, to summarize everything you said, it was like we play a role in making it more popular. Try to make it more popular. Uh, Help kids play the game. Now, I want to bring up one thing. For example, you had your provocative tweet. Remember your provocative tweet that we
yeah.
disagreed on it. So, just for anyone that didn't see, Adam put a tweet out of essentially what he just said about helping kids get them to love the game, drills so they can learn how to be technical players, and he put some drills. Just to make one thing clear of this one that I disagreed. What I mainly disagreed, and I think I already explained it to you on your podcast, was a lot of the times there are parents that sometimes are not very big into soccer. Or they just kind of like watch it, but they never played at any level. So they don't really understand what a soccer practice is, how the game works. They just like watching it, which is fine. We welcome every single fan. But I think my point there was, if you don't know what you're doing, if you really don't know, don't try to act like you know, which I'm not talking
Hmm.
about you. I'm talking about anyone that wants to help. Wanting to help and not knowing what you're doing will do a bit more damage. And then that's where I brought up the point. If you are someone that doesn't know, like, I don't really know how to do the drills, I don't know when to coach, I don't know, I don't understand the game. Like, put me to coach basketball, I would just let the kids play because I don't freaking know. I just like watching it. I don't know. Football, even worse. So if you don't know and you want to get kids involved, just organize a pickup game for the kids. Put like a little
Mhm.
goal, something, put cones on the side and let them play. And I think you said this in the podcast, just kind of stay there so you break a fight if something happens. Make sure you know the rules. So if someone puts their hand, you stop the game, a foul. If you don't know what you're doing and you just want to help, organize games. Let kids play. And one thing that actually we forgot to talk about yesterday and just came to my mind right now, rec leagues for kids, even adults, but even for kids, the one of the biggest issues is refs. You don't have enough refs.
Mhm.
So if you know the rules, you can be a ref, volunteer or get paid to do it just to help out. I know it sucks to be a ref. They're gonna yell. It's annoying. I agree, but if you want to help these little things, I know one person, people doing it. It's not that much, but if we all do it, it's a way to help. So again, if you know the game, you play the game, you know soccer, do drills, teach the kids, get them to love the game. If you don't know what you're doing, if you organize a little pickup game with the kids, you're already doing a lot. They're going to love the game. They're going to have fun. Some of them will continue to play, some of them won't. And again, getting kids to fall in love with the game, it's playing, playing, playing. Get
Mhm.
taking them to games, whether it is USL, high school games, anything. It's fun. Kids love it. They'll have fun and they'll enjoy it, and you get them to love the game. Now, obviously, when you go to elite player development, we talked about like what Tom Byer preaches so much, and you kind of touched upon it. It's like if a kid never touched a soccer ball till age 8, can they still be a good player? Yeah, they can develop still at that age. But you're probably not going to become a professional player. Maybe college. You can go to college.
I would think not.
Um,
Yeah, there's plenty of places to play college if you're
yeah,
that level, yeah.
college for sure, but elite development, it's what Tom Byer says, like, get them to fall in love with the ball very early with soccer, very early, like 3 years old, not really to learn how to play, but already be around it. There's some development skills that you can do and get the kids to have fun. At the end of the day, that's what I need. There's some stories that I could tell here, but I told them like the
Well, tell one
Pareja
of
story.
them. Tell one of
Well,
them.
I'm not telling the Pareja story because that one I told it in your podcast. If anyone wants to listen to that one, go check out the podcast one.
Well,
But
let me summarize it for people, because
okay.
because you were sitting in a meeting with Pareja and some academy guy, and the academy guy and Pareja said, "Yeah, no, we don't. We just let the kids play." And
Yeah.
was it he who said, the coaches don't know when to stop a drill or don't know how to like how,
No, it
or was
was
that
like
just you?
it wasn't even me. It was the meeting. Pareja wasn't really talking at all. But then one of the coaches was talking about what you said about parents wanting results and wanting drills, and then one of the volunteer parents didn't really know what to do. He was like a baseball guy trying to help, and then Pareja interrupted and just said, "You don't know what to do? Let them play.
Right.
Just organize it. Just let them play." That's what he was trying to say. Is like you are a parent that knows baseball, but you want to help soccer. You help by not doing a lot. You help by
Mhm.
letting them play, organizing, being the adult in the room, but not the coach, just the adult. And Pareja interrupted that. Yeah.
Let me give a little context on that, because so where I coach, I've been coaching rec soccer for 3 years, so 6,
Hmm.
7 seasons, um, and lots of different kids, and, look at my team right now, it's a bunch of 6 and 7-year-olds who are playing U8, so they're a little young for the age group, but they're doing fine. Um, I would say at the beginning of the season, there were probably 2, 3 kids on the team who were ready to just go play, you know?
Hmm.
Like, they could go play pickup soccer, they'd be fine. Um, a couple of them I had for a couple of seasons, and one was already pretty good. Uh, but there were 3, 4 kids on the team. Like, if I tell them to go play pickup soccer, if I just roll the ball out there, you guys play, it's gonna be they're, like, never gonna touch the ball because the other 3 kids are just gonna totally dominate. They have more control of the ball. These other
Hmm.
kids haven't touched the ball much. It's like I don't know, it's like an NBA player against like a
Me.
middle school basketball player.
Against me.
There you go. Yeah. It's such a huge gap that, like, for that group of kids, it's not even practical for them all to play pickup together. I mean, I think if they did it regularly, if they did it twice a
Hmm.
week, they would figure it out. Like, the game is the best teacher. But I think that's the rub of our disagreement, right? Where it's like, I agree that what you're saying is right and what Pareja is saying is right. That's the answer, pickup culture. But within the practical reality that we have right now, what can be done?
I I think I understand your point a bit more now. Now that I thought about it, because Pareja is a professional coach working with like elite players, and obviously when he looks into academies, he's looking at a high level. So maybe he's thinking with the mindset of kids that already know how to play. If they already
Mm,
know how to play, don't overcoach them. Let them play. They already know how to play. It's going to be competitive. And in my mindset too, when I go back to when I lived in Brazil, uh, most kids in Brazil that play soccer, they already have a basic understanding and skill set of the game. They already know how to play. So if you put a game and just let them play, you're going to see that the game will flow. Even like at 7 year olds, you're going to see the game flowing. But in the
hmm
US, you're right. A lot of the kids I coach that are just starting at age like 7, you put a game, they're either all just running and crashing into each other sometimes, or some of them are just isolated, a bit scared because they're like, what's going on? That kid's so
Yeah.
fast with the ball. So, yes, in the US, it can be a bit trickier because sometimes you'll get a group that the kid literally never kicked a soccer ball in his life. And I have this Hispanic kid that I coach here. He's played since he was like 3. So he gets the ball, he'll just dribble through 7, and he's getting
Yeah.
better, but no one else touches the ball.
Right.
Um,
That's the
so
thing
I
I'm thinking
understand.
about. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
maybe it's like depending on it has to be like it's very complicated because it almost becomes a situation where you have to judge your own group. Can your group do that? Do you have enough play? Obviously, when they're like 9 or 10, most Americans that play soccer by age 9 or 10, the game will flow. But yes, if it's like 5, 6, 7 year olds, depends on what level of a 5, 6, 7 year old you get. We Go ahead.
well, that makes me think of something because I've been talking about, well, what if we could just get it? We could develop 6-year-olds to the point where they can rondo at 10. And maybe the better question is like, can we develop 5 and 6-year-olds to the point where they can actually play pickup soccer when they're 7 or 8? And these are kids, again, whose parents don't know soccer, don't particularly care about soccer. That's the thing. It's something about American culture where people just put their kids in soccer at a young
Mhm.
age, even though they don't really love soccer. Like, I don't know exactly
Yeah.
why it works like that, but it does. And
Is it because it's easier for kids than like basketball, football, maybe?
I think that's part of it. Yeah. So maybe you get the kids who don't have like a sport that they love, and their parents are like, "Hey, you got to play some kind of sport right now. We'll throw you in soccer." Yeah, it is. I mean, on one level, it is easier, but that's probably part of it.
Wait, wait, just to
So
make one thing clear, I'm not saying soccer is like easier to become a pro player. I'm saying
no,
soccer is just easier for a kid to kick a ball than it is to throw at a hoop that's like 10 feet tall or 8 feet tall, or football that you have to like tackle people and throw a ball and equipment. Soccer, you just put a ball and kids can just kick it around. So it's a bit easier as a kid to have fun with soccer instead of these other sports.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I understood your point perfectly, and I think it's true. I mean, when you talk about like the chess match that a soccer game is at a high level, then it's like obviously it's not easier than other sports, but yeah, I think that uh that 5, 6-year-old whose parents sign them up for soccer, whose parents don't know much about soccer, they could use a little bit more help than they're getting currently. And we talked about this yesterday too, but the way US soccer has its grassroots training program,
Mhm.
it's just too high of a barrier. These people don't want to sit there and do like an hour and a half webinar. I mean, they're just frankly not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. So there has to be, and I think you made this suggestion, there has to be some free options, some simple options, some free YouTube videos that just to give people a little bit of an idea, because there's work to be done there, and it can help. And you can get those kids to, I've seen it, man. It's very satisfying too, like to watch a kid who doesn't really understand even how to manipulate the ball at all. You just spend like 3 months essentially playing sharks and minnows, like, honestly, like, chasing them around with the ball, making them change direction, applying passive pressure, and you see them blossom. They figure out how to use the ball a little bit. Once they figure out how to use the ball, then they want the ball, and then they go and get the ball from the other team, so they become a better competitor once they have a little bit of ball mastery. It's a very, very cool thing, and, it's like, you don't have to be, I think even a parent who doesn't know the game, as long as they get a couple of pointers and they get, like you say, reminded not to overcoach, they could really help out, and see that process repeated all over the country.
Yeah,
And
I
and,
think
and I'm sure it does. It does happen, right? It's not like never happens in rec soccer. The kids are learning how to play soccer in some places, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just to finalize the episode because I think we touched upon many of the points. I think these are conversations that are good to have because maybe a soccer parent is listening to this right now and this gives them ideas and they'll talk to people and they'll discuss and it generates a conversation that's actually very important for US soccer. And I don't think enough people talk about it in bigger platforms and hopefully they will one day. But just to finalize, that's one thing US soccer can do to help, which is very cheap, very easy. Is we essentially talked about how we need to make the sport more popular, more people interested, parents to be interested. We've had so many games, Adam, with the U.S. men's national team where we don't pack the stadium. We don't pack the stadium. Why isn't U.S. soccer knowingly that they won't pack the stadium against like Uzbekistan? Why are they not going to local soccer schools or local elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, and just give away 1,000 tickets? Get people, because if it's free, some people might go, you know what, I'm not really into soccer, but let me take my kids here. It's free, let me take my kids. It's a nice little event to go with the family. And who knows, maybe the kid leaves there and is like, Dad, I want a Christian Pulisic jersey. Dad, can we go to the next game? All of a sudden that dad has something to do with his son or his daughter. He'll get into it, he'll try to learn more and play, or maybe he'll buy FIFA and the kid will start playing. I know that if you give 1,000 tickets, maybe only 20 or 10 people will stick around, really enjoy it. Okay, that's 10 more. Then do it
Mm-hmm.
again. Then that's 10
Mm-hmm.
more. And then eventually that's like 1,000 people. And those 1,000 people, and it trickles down because then they pass on to their kids. It's these little steps that I don't see US soccer do, which I know what I just said has nothing to do with youth development, but at the same time it does because it's making it more popular. You have more people playing, naturally there's more competition, more money, and things will fix. But I think it's everything we talked about, it has to be worked together. One measure or a half measure doesn't solve it. It has to be together, like Orlando City or MLS clubs partnering with the local soccer schools to encourage development. US soccer making the game more popular. Us, the people that already love soccer, know enough of the game to help kids develop, do our part. Because we talked about, I think we said this in the podcast, you don't need to be Pep Guardiola to teach a 5-year-old how to pass the ball or help him have fun. You don't need to be Pep Guardiola. You can be Greg Berhalter and you'll do it. I'm joking. I'm joking. I had to throw a
I don't
curveball.
care. Um, well, I mean, I was just at the game in Nashville, which was a blast. Like that was a fun game to watch when we beat
Mhm.
Ghana 4-0. Lots of beautiful soccer in the first half. And 12,000 empty seats in that stadium, which is beautiful. And I know the ticketing. I don't know. I mean, there's ticketing considerations. There's like, are you lowering the value of the tickets that people have already bought by giving away free tickets? There's all kinds of considerations that I'm sure I don't fully understand. But I do think a little bit US soccer is in the same boat as MLS here, where it's like survival and they just had to pay a lot of money out after the lawsuit and they're not packing stadium. I don't know. So I don't know if they have, I don't know if maybe they're a little too short-sighted to see the possibility of giving away free tickets, or maybe there's some considerations that I don't understand.
I
But I mean,
think
on its face,
even,
it's the idea makes a lot of sense.
but even if the people are paying those $100 for tickets, 150, if you're giving 500, 1,000 tickets to local schools, like there's no way people are going to be complaining about that. It's like
You're
that's
right.
different. That's like a program to help grow soccer in this country, get kids that are between the ages of like 5 to 15 to go to games, and some of them will like it. If someone's going to complain about that, so be it. Just don't go to the game. If you're going to be like that, that's literally, it doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you know what, just have a kid and have him like soccer, and maybe US soccer will give your kid a ticket, then you'll go for free. I don't know. But Adam, I think that's all we wanted to cover here today. This is a conversation that can go for hours and hours, so we have to end it at some point. Anyone watching this video right now, in the comment section of the video, let us know your thoughts, because you guys are thousands of people, and you can give us ideas. And I'm probably going to send it to Adam if I see a good idea, and we'll be discussing that in the future too. Adam, do you want to go through where they can find you along with the handle that I put right next to your name?
That's the place. Twitter is where you can get to all this stuff. I do want to say one more thing though. We're not gonna, and we agreed about this yesterday. We are not gonna win a World Cup until we have a stronger
Hmm.
foundation of a soccer culture. It's just
Yeah.
It's delusion to think we are, and I mean, to a certain extent, we should all be pulling in the same direction on that.
Yeah, it's what we said. If you're in the World Cup, you have like a minimal percentage chance because you're playing, so there's a chance, 0.1, 1%, whatever. But it's not realistic. We don't have the players. We don't have the development set. I would say to a bare minimum, we're like 20 to 30 years away. Besides, like an accidental win or something.
Right.
Along
So just
like
a miracle on grass.
yeah, what we're saying is like us being consistent contenders, like a Brazil, France, Argentina. They're always contenders. Then eventually they win. We're not close to that as much as some people think we're not. We're better than we were 20 years ago, but we're far from that. Which again, we were not very good, especially when you go before the 90s. But everyone, thank you very much for watching. Drop a like before you go. Go follow Scuff Podcast on Twitter and check out their podcast. I was a guest. We kind of talked about this in depth, so go check that out. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.